Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Political Science Major Spotlight. In this session, we will cover everything from taking introductory level courses to completing your capstone. Today, we are joined by Professors Robert Boatwright and Ora Sekali. Would you two mind introducing yourselves for a quick moment?
Okay, I'm Rob Boatwright. I'm the chair currently. I teach classes in American politics. I study campaign finance, elections, stuff of that sort.
And I'm Ora Sekali. I teach courses on the politics of the Middle East and also on political violence.
Awesome. Well, thank you two for joining me today for this major spotlight. I know political science is quite popular at Clark, so there are going to be a lot of interested students in learning more about this major. So I'd like to start kind of at the beginning, which makes the most sense to me. So in talking about the basics of the political science major, can you take a moment to just simply talk about some of the core major requirements and maybe going in chronological order from first year, throughout?
Sure. Well, there are three main subfields to political science: American politics, international relations, and comparative politics. First years generally have a choice between taking the intro classes in each of those areas, or at times we'll have a first year course or other classes that are more focused than your average introductory course. Professor Sekali will talk about that more in a moment. So first years generally take the introductory courses. After you've taken a few political science classes, you're sure you want to major in it. We ask all of our students to take one class in political theory and a class in research methods, statistics, research design, that sort of thing. And then by sophomore or junior year, students are able to take upper level electives. We ask everyone to take a couple of electives in the area they're not going to focus on, but of those three subject areas, we ask everybody to focus on one area, to take several electives in that. We also ask people at some point along the way to take an economics class and a history class that's kind of related to what they're studying. Mm-hmm. And then by senior year, students are able to take a capstone class, which we'll also talk about more in a moment. That's sort of a more intensive research experience focused on an area that they've taken an interest in.
Awesome. Thank you.
And, like other departments, we also offer what are called FYIs, or first year intensives, which is something that every first year student at Clark has to take. Mm-hmm. And they're offered in a wide range of departments, including our department. So for instance, in the fall, I will be teaching an FYI on politics and comic books, which I'm really, really excited about, where we'll be looking at the way that international political crises and issues like race, gender, class are addressed in comic books, not just from the United States, but comic books from all over the world. And we also offer other FYIs in our department as well. So that's also a good way to sort of get a taste of what's available in the political science department.
No, that's awesome. Can I enroll in that class maybe? Or like sit on it maybe?
You're more than welcome to come hang out with us and talk about comic books. I am really excited about teaching this class.
It sounds really cool. But I think FYIs are kind of a good springboard before we start talking about maybe more intense political science experiences, for maybe each of you to talk really quick on ways that maybe you've advised political science students at Clark, or like some of the practices that you and your colleagues employ while advising political science students.
For sure. One of the questions that students often have in advising when they're thinking about declaring a political science major is, which subfield am I supposed to choose, right? How do I know whether I'm supposed to choose to concentrate on international relations or comparative politics or American politics? And what I always tell students is look through the course catalog, find the courses that interest you, and pick your subfield that way. Don't try to do it the other way around. Let your interests really drive how you approach the major, because that's going to end up being the most intellectually engaging and frankly the most fun way of going about it.
It's also important to be broadly educated. I think all of my colleagues are very good teachers, and I think it's often the case that students will take an interest in something a year or two into their college experience that they just didn't think that they would have an interest in. So oftentimes, if you take a risk, you take a class on something that you know little about but were always curious about, or you take a class simply because you were told that the person teaching it is a good teacher, you can find that you have interest that you didn't know you had.
That's
Awesome.
definitely true.
Yeah, thank you for that. Great. So you kind of laid out the path of the major. We've talked, a little bit about FYIs offered, and then a little bit about advising. So I want to switch gears now, if that's okay, and kind of talk more about applied learning in political science. So opportunities like research opportunities, maybe internship opportunities, where students are building more, core skills, picking up competencies, things like that. So through kind of political science at Clark, can you talk about maybe some research that students have done, or research that you kind of force upon students at times? Either or.
Well, all of the faculty in our department are active researchers. We're always looking for help from students or looking to design projects that students can play a role in. We have a lot of students doing applied research in the area, doing work in the broader Worcester community. We've had many students that go abroad to do research projects, either something that was sparked by their work with a faculty member or an idea that they had sort of independently from their class. We're fortunate enough to have the ability to fund student research during the summer, so we've sent students all over the globe to do projects during the summertime. We had a student who went to Myanmar a while back to do research there. We've had students travel around Europe, around Asia, doing field research. Again, sometimes this is something that a professor has asked for assistance in, or sometimes it's just an idea that a student developed on their own.
Awesome. Do you even have anything to add, Aura, to research?
Well, only that the chance to work with faculty as research assistants is something that I think is maybe more available to students at Clark than at a lot of universities, especially at the undergraduate level. We do really go out of our way to look for undergraduates to hire as research assistants. And I think sort of pound for pound, undergraduates at Clark have more access to faculty and more of a chance to really get involved in a very real way in our research than at other universities that are a lot bigger, where there are a lot of PhD students, where undergraduates maybe don't get to be as involved in faculty research. So for instance, I'm currently working on a book about the civil war in Syria. And last year I had an undergraduate research assistant who helped me translate and transcribe a bunch of the interviews that I'd done with Syrian refugees from Arabic into English, and was really just an incredibly important part of the research process for me. And I think at a lot of universities, undergraduates don't always have access to that kind of opportunity, and at Clark, they definitely do.
Yeah, that's one of the things I think we try to focus on when we're explaining to families that we're like a small liberal arts research university. There's not a ton of places that tote all of those kind of qualifiers. So kind of breaking it down for students, it's helpful to hear from the professors how available the professors are. I can say it in admissions so many times, but coming from you guys, it kind of really nails the point home.
Sorry, can I ask a logistical question really quickly, because I know you're going to ask this? Are you hearing a weird, loud grinding noise in the background?
Mm-mm.
Good. My dog is chewing on a Benebone in the background.
Nice.
And it's really loud. Is that a problem?
No, I can't. It's not picking up any of it.
Okay.
You're crystal clear. Yeah, I just hear your voice.
Sorry for the interruption.
No worries. Cool. So I'm gonna dive back into I think internship opportunities. Would it make sense to ask about that right now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's awesome. So you touched on research. You mentioned study abroad, and also the involvement in the local community here in Worcester. Can we talk a little bit about kind of internship opportunities that students have recently pursued that either of you know of?
Well, Clark is very connected to a lot of different things going on in Worcester. Worcester is really, in many ways, a nice laboratory for students to learn a little bit about politics. It's big enough that it has many of the problems and challenges that larger cities have, but at the same time, it's small enough that students can make a difference, and they can get to know local policymakers. So we've had, over the years, we've had students who worked with community organizations, helping out various immigrant groups in the neighborhood. Worcester has a large Latino population. It has a large Vietnamese population. Students often have a chance to work with within these communities. We've also had students work for the district attorney in the area. Our congressman is also quite connected with Clark, and every year we have a couple people who will go to work for a congressman or will go to work in the Senate. We're close enough to Boston and to the Amherst area that at times we'll have students also who find internships in Boston or in Amherst, working for law firms, big companies there, non-government organizations.
I've also had, because I teach politics in the Middle East, I tend to talk to a lot of students who are going to study abroad in Jordan or sometimes in Morocco, sometimes in Israel, other parts of the Middle East. And I've had a number of students who added internships to their study abroad experience as a way of getting sort of a broader perspective on the places where they were studying abroad and engaging a little bit with the community outside of the university where they were studying. And I know that's been a really meaningful experience for a number of students, who've done work with, local community centers or work with refugee populations or other institutions and places where they were studying abroad.
Now, those all sound like really great opportunities. And thinking about those opportunities and really thinking about what we prepare students for, can either of you highlight maybe some of the core skills that students pick up through a political science major at Clark that really prepare them for success after?
So I like to think of this as sort of a 3-layered question, right? So there's the really broad skills that you get through a liberal arts education just across the board, right? So the ability to think critically, the ability to write really well, right? That's I think common to most majors at a liberal arts university. Then there's the stuff which is particular to this, or in which the social sciences, of which political science is one, are particularly strong. So that stuff like being able to tell if somebody is trying to con you with bad data, being able to pick apart an argument in excruciating detail, right? So the stuff that that the social sciences are really, really strong at. And then there's as we narrow even further, then there's the stuff that's really particular to political science. So specialized knowledge, like being able to assess the relative merits of different electoral systems, right? Understanding how different kinds of voting are going to produce different results, or learning a lot about the specifics of Chinese politics, or understanding, international trade. So there are broadly applicable skills, understanding a bit about statistics, understanding the way that the media influences politics, right? There's stuff that's broadly applicable across all of those issue areas, in which I think political science is particularly strong, but there are also important links with other social science disciplines.
That's awesome. Do you maybe have anything to add?
Well, I think right now, this moment that we're at in our country, I think there are a lot of people who come to Clark having absorbed strong political views, you might say, before they show up. So I think what we really try to emphasize is that it's important to put the current conflicts we're seeing in American politics and internationally in a little bit of context, right? There's a lot that we can learn from history about the moment that we're in, and there's a lot we can learn as well about the motives of politicians, right? Why do politicians who we seem to disagree with succeed? Why are ideas that might strike us as problematic popular among the public? So I think it's important for all of our majors to try to step back and to study what's going on, as opposed to just using sort of knee-jerk reactions to respond to politics. And that's a lot of what we emphasize.
No, that's awesome. Contextualizing events and information is super important. And I think that's something Clark focuses on, like, across the board. So awesome, thank you. So now I want to talk a little bit about kind of outcomes and final experiences as a political science major. So if we could maybe talk a little bit about the capstone experience and then jump to outcomes, I think that would be the most useful use of our time. So the capstone process for the political science major. What does that look like? What can students expect? What are some capstones you've recently seen? Is it a class? Is it an internship? Like what are we working with?
So in the political science department, all students need to take a capstone seminar, generally either in their junior or senior year. I think most students end up taking it in their senior year, but not everyone. So those are small seminars. They're usually fewer than 15 people that meet for 3 hours once a week. And they tend to be fairly involved, by which I mean, I always show up to my seminar. So I teach a capstone seminar on Civil War, I teach another one on refugees, and I always show up with all of these discussion questions planned, and I can never get a word in edgewise because the students are so engaged with the material. And so it's just like a very long, very interesting conversation. Students then write a substantive research paper at the end of the semester. So in my classes, it's usually 20 to 25 pages that's connected to the course material. And we have a whole bunch of different capstones in our department. So students have to take a capstone seminar in their particular subfield. So students who are concentrating in comparative politics will take, some of my capstone seminars, or some that are offered by my colleagues who teach Latin American politics, Chinese politics, Russian politics. In international relations, we have a capstone seminar on religion and international politics. I think there's one on terrorism. I know, Rob, you are teaching a really cool capstone in the fall that I wish I could take, called Fixing American Democracy, which,
wow.
I have a lot of faith in Clark students, so I'm very glad that they're going to be a bunch of Clarkies sitting in a room trying to figure out how to fix American democracy. So the purpose of the seminars really is to give students a chance to really drill down and think in a deep and serious way, and in a very focused way, about the material that they've been engaging with throughout the course of their time at Clark as part of the political science major, and then to give them a chance to do some really substantive research in a subject that interests them.
Awesome, thank you. Rob, do you have anything to add? How you're gonna fix?
Well, this is a course I haven't taught before. I'm very excited to be teaching it for the first time. I think that in capstones, I tend to learn a lot from my students. So, as a faculty member, there's an art to trying to set things up so that you can do something in your area of expertise, but at the same time, find a way to step back and let your students teach you things. So the class that we had mentioned, Fixing American Democracy, we'll go through a number of different proposals for electoral reform. We'll look at the primary process at the presidential level and at the congressional level, think about ways that we could do things differently, think about our campaign finance laws, think about our electoral system. Are there reforms that we can make to our voting systems, changes that we could make to the way political parties are organized, the role interest groups play. Think about gerrymandering, think about other sort of broad topics like that. So these are all areas that students tend to think a lot about in their introductory classes. They come to Clark having heard various things about, say, how the primary process works, and it gives them an opportunity to think critically about how people have approached this over time, to think a little bit about the pros and cons of different reform proposals. That is, there's no silver bullet to fix our democracy. Any proposal that people might make is going to have its problems, and so it's a chance for students to think about the things they're passionate about, but to think critically about them, right? Think about what the drawbacks might be to any ideas they may have.
That's awesome. So that's also a class I would love to audit if possible.
Please take very good notes in that class, Rob.
Awesome. So really quick, I would just love to hear a little bit about what do you see most political science majors doing after Clark? Is it post-grad degrees? Do they look for employment full-time? Are they doing services like Peace Corps, Teach for America, those sorts of opportunities? Do you have a pulse on this question?
Well, I think Aura answered a question a little while ago saying it's a three-part kind of thing. There's many parts of this as well. We certainly provide students with the resources to go out there and tap the alumni network and get wonderful jobs. So we have a lot of people in the New England area who are doing all sorts of things in local government, in state government, and students can certainly do that. We have a very strong pre-law program at Clark, so a lot of students go to law school. We have a fifth-year master's program, so students can stay at Clark for an extra year, get an MBA, get a master's in public policy. One of the things that I've been most excited about as chair over the last year or two is I've been working with the education department. So we now have the ability to get students certified at Clark to teach civics at the high school level in Massachusetts if they want to. So there are a lot of different professional opportunities. There are a lot of different opportunities to go to graduate school. But at the same time, I think we try to provide students with a well-rounded, broad education. So learning about political science doesn't mean you have to go into politics as a career. We have students who've gone into all different walks of life, and I think knowing a little bit about politics makes you a better citizen. And that's something that we need in all walks of life.
I mean, the only thing I would add to that, and I wholeheartedly agree with everything Rob just said, is Clark students in general, including our majors, are a very creative community who often sort of approach things their own way. So I've also seen students take a political science major and do just really cool and really unexpected stuff with it. I had a student a few years ago who majored in political science, joined the Peace Corps after graduation, served in Rwanda, then came back and started an organization called Leaders of the Free World that provides leadership training culminating in a 1 week, although I think now they're up to 10 days, trip somewhere in the world. They've been to Ghana, they've been to Egypt, they've been to China for young African-American men who haven't had a chance to travel internationally before. And it's a really cool, it's a really, really cool organization. And that is a very, I don't want to say typical, because I'm not sure there is such a thing as a typical Clark student or a typical political science major at Clark, but that is certainly not out of character for this sort of stuff that our students and our majors come up with.
That's awesome. Thank you for that piece. So that's about it. That's all the questions I have. I guess I'd like to end on one quick thing. Could each of you, for the first years out there, could each of you give a piece of advice for incoming college students in this kind of day and age?
Sure. You may be coming to college thinking you know exactly what you want to study and that you know exactly what you want to major in, and that's great. It's really great to have goals. It's really great to know what your interests are. But don't let that stop you from taking a class that you think sounds a little interesting. You're not really sure what it's about, but you think, astronomy, that might be interesting. Chinese politics, that might be interesting. So try to balance that focus with a willingness to explore and try new stuff, because you never know what's going to spark your interest and what's going to turn out to be a real intellectual passion for you.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Right now I'm spending a lot of time advising students who are going to be seniors about what classes to take. And what I've told them is that when I look back on college, I think a lot about things that I didn't get a chance to do, right? So it's important when you go to college to think about the fact that it's really one of the few times in your life that you can study things that you don't know anything about, that you can study things just because you're interested, that you can study something because your roommate told you, wow, this person teaching this class is the expert on this arcane subject area. So I think it's important to think broadly about what sorts of things, when you get to be 40 or 50, you're going to wish that you spent some time learning. And so as Horace said, most of our students, I think, change their mind at some point about what they're doing, and they should. Many people come to college with strong ideas about what they want, and they follow through on them. But even if you think you know exactly what you want, think about the other things, right? College is not just about having a career. College is about preparing yourself to enjoy lots of the things that will happen in your life after you leave.
Awesome. Thank you. So Robert, Aura, it was awesome talking to you two this morning. It gave me a lot of great information to work with, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.
Pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.